It's good to be with you again. I love the King James Version of the Bible. I don't read it that much now because I read other translations, newer translations that have come to my hand in these passing years. But if you hear me quoting the Bible, just off my memory, I'll probably be quoting the King James Version because the first dozen or 15 times that I read the Bible through from cover to cover, I was reading the King James Version, and much of what I know to quote, I know from those readings, not simply because I memorized verses, though I did a good deal of that, but because when you read and read and read, especially the somewhat sonorous and beautiful renderings of the King James Version, they form a groove in your brain, and you find yourself quoting King James whether you intend to or not. So I love the King James Version of the Bible. Yes, indeed, I do. And yet, having said that, there are some times when the King James Version gets in the way of the purposes of our reading, simply because it is so beautiful, because the rhythm is so insistent, because the language is so moving. We may miss the very simple message itself. I'm thinking right now of one of the most familiar of passages and sections of the Bible, Psalm 23. And I'm thinking specifically of the verse in Psalm 73, it's Psalm 23, probably the most familiar passage in the Bible, that chapter of 6 verses, that psalm. This phrase, "He maketh me to lie down in green pastures." I'm quoting the King James, and that was my problem, was the King James. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Maketh is such a beautiful word, and of course not part of our language today, that I don't think I ever fully appreciated what it was saying until a few weeks ago when I was reading in a new translation of the book of Psalms, the translation by the Hebrew scholar Robert Alter. He had a note about that verse. First of all, he was translating it, "He makes me lie down." And that struck me, but not as much until I read his note, in which he observed that the verb that is used, that's translated makes, or that in the King James is maketh, that lovely word, that it means that it is a verb that in the Hebrew was used for the way the shepherd or some other tender of animals would require animals to do things. They would make them do it. And for the first time, I caught something about that psalm I never had before. He makes me lie down. That's what the psalmist said about the good shepherd. He makes the sheep lie down. I need to be made to lie down sometimes, and so do you, I venture. We don't have the good sense ourselves to lie down when we should. That is, to cast off our cares and simply to give up and let ourselves be restored by the gracious hand of God and by the gift of rest and of sleep. The shepherd knows that if he pushes those sheep all day long or lets them simply wander about in their own way, they'll use up too much of their energy. They will indeed make themselves more of a hazard and more susceptible to illnesses that can come to the world of the sheep. So the shepherd must sometimes make them lie down, whether they want to or not. Just as some of you as parents, especially perhaps as a mother, make your children take a nap, whether they want a nap or not, because you know they need a nap, whether they can conceive of that idea or not. You know it's time for them to go to bed. You know it because you have to see them go to bed. But you know it because you know they'll be better off tomorrow if they do. God, the Good Shepherd, would make us, if we would let him, lie down, relax, put aside our troubles, forget about some responsibilities for half an hour or an hour or a day until we are restored. So I say to you today, I hope you will allow your good shepherd to do for you what a good shepherd could do for sheep, because the shepherd can make the sheep lie down. God can't make you lie down, short of your growing ill, and God doesn't make people ill. We do that for ourselves. But we need to learn how to accept the influence of God to make ourselves lie down, give up the burden for the day, give up the busyness we think is so important, and let God do his business in our lives. That's what I'm thinking about today. Thank you now.